Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute roller coaster that is the corporate turnaround of Capcom. You know them, right? The legendary creators behind iconic franchises like Resident Evil, Street Fighter, and Devil May Cry. We're talking about a company that hit dizzying highs, somehow survived the total collapse of the arcade era, and then completely reshaped the gaming landscape across multiple console generations. All right, let's jump right into it. I want to start off with a number that is just staggering. 93%. Based on their recent financial reports, 93% of Capcom's game sales are now completely digital. Think about that for a second. For a legacy publisher that literally built its entire empire on massive, heavy, physical wooden arcade cabinets, that number is almost unbelievable. So, it really begs a huge question, doesn't it? How exactly did a company so deeply rooted in physical hardware navigate the death of the arcade? How did they push through a crippling internal identity crisis and then somehow reinvent the modern action and fighting game genres for today's digital era? Well, throughout this explainer, we're going to figure out exactly how they pulled it off. Act 1, the Golden Age and the Arcade Crash. To really understand their modern digital reinvention, we kind of have to go back to the beginning. They were founded back in 1979 as an electronic game machine maker, and then they dropped their first arcade games in 1983. Fast forward to 1991, and boom, Street Fighter 2 hits, and just completely revolutionizes the arcade scene. It basically put the competitive one-on-one fighting genre on the map. Then, in 1996, they literally created the survival horror genre from scratch with Resident Evil. But as we got closer to the new millennium, the arcade market in the West went into this rapid terminal decline. I mean, it got so bad that by 2004, Capcom actually had to officially shut down every single one of their US arcade centers. They had absolutely no choice but to pivot entirely to the home console market. Here's a really cool fun fact, actually. The name Capcom is a clipped compound of capsule computers. Back in the 80s, they wanted a name that stood for two things: a secure, hard shell to protect their software from piracy, and a tight capsule packed with top-tier immersive entertainment. And as they scrambled away from dying arcades and fully embraced consoles, that core philosophy, delivering securely packed, incredibly high-quality entertainment, became their ultimate guiding light. Which brings us to Act 2, the identity crisis. Now, moving their legendary franchises into the HD console era, that turned out to be a near-fatal stumbling block for them. Just look at 2005's Resident Evil 4. It was this generational masterpiece, right? Striking this genius, perfect balance between deep survival horror and big Hollywood action cinema. But then, jump to 2012. Capcom started aggressively chasing Western shooter trends, and what we got was Resident Evil 6, basically a bloated Call of Duty clone. They traded the horror for huge explosions and, famously, a scene where a hero is literally punching boulders inside an active volcano. Yeah. It was like the creators were living on a completely different planet from their audience. Get this, series producer Masachika Kawada actually went on record in 2012 saying the survival horror market was too small. He really believed people just didn't care about horror anymore. Another producer even admitted they only put zombies into Resident Evil 6 because fans specifically begged for them. They were completely tossing out the very identity that put them on the map. And this identity crisis, it infected absolutely everything they were making. Street Fighter V dropped in a totally bare-bones state with hardly any single-player content and pretty terrible online functionality. Then they completely outsourced Devil May Cry to a UK studio, which sparked massive outrage from the fanbase online. And let's not forget their Western-chasing sci-fi shooters like Lost Planet, which totally failed to capture the audiences they were aiming for. Essentially, they were suffering a massive loss of their core Japanese development identity, right exactly when new console generations were demanding more innovation than ever. All right, moving into Act 3, the re-engine revolution. So, realizing they were literally staring down the brink of irrelevance, Capcom finally woke up and enacted a massive internal reorganization. They completely ditched those fragmented, auteur-driven projects that were just desperately trying to mimic Western games. Instead, they pivoted to a unified, team-led strategy. The goal? To celebrate exactly what made Capcom's action and fighting games so unique on a global stage in the first place. But, to physically power this massive shift in philosophy, they needed brand new tools. So they built their own proprietary tech, the RE engine. This completely replaced their aging MT framework. Director Yasuhiro Ampo said the whole point was to create a development environment that was less stressful and let them build things much quicker. And it worked. This engine gave them incredibly nimble tools and stunningly photorealistic assets, which meant developers could rapidly trial and error their creative ideas on the fly. It was a total game changer. Having this bespoke, powerful technology empowered their veteran developers to actually dream big again. Take Hideaki Itsuno, for example, the longtime director of Devil May Cry. He came back to the franchise after a decade away, and he had one singular, glorious mission: to make the coolest action game of all time, period. With the RE engine, he could literally distill everything he thought was cool, movies, sports, comic books, directly into the gameplay. He brought the franchise right back to its wildly stylish heavy metal roots. By marrying the sheer power of the RE engine with a rock-solid commitment to their roots, they pulled off what is honestly a flawless creative comeback. Step 1, return to roots. Resident Evil 7 completely dumped the action bloat and went back to terrifying, isolated survival horror. Step 2, polish the combat. Devil May Cry 5 delivered unparalleled, ridiculously stylish action. And Step 3, listen to the fans. Learning from past missteps, Street Fighter 6 launched, packed with robust modes and flawless online play. They didn't just come back. They actively reinvented these modern genres for today's consoles. Now for the final piece of the puzzle, Act 4, Mastering the Digital Era. This entire creative renaissance positioned Capcom perfectly to capitalize on the biggest shift in modern gaming history, the digital marketplace. Remember that insane number we started with earlier? 93% of Capcom's game sales are now digital. By diving headfirst into digital distribution, they totally bypassed the massive physical manufacturing bottlenecks that haunted the arcade in early console days. Now, they're seamlessly hitting players in over 220 countries and expanding their profit margins immensely. And here is a totally crucial part of this strategy. They aggressively targeted the PC market. Today, PC sales make up a massive 54.4% of Capcom's total game sales. They tapped into this vast, global audience of players who just weren't tied down to a specific plastic box under their TV anymore, and they did it by consistently releasing beautifully optimized day one PC ports. The financial impact of this? It's staggering. Recently, Steam alone accounted for over 20% of Capcom's total revenue. That is nearly double the share coming from PlayStation. Think about that. While other publishers were out there fighting tooth and nail over console exclusives, Capcom just stepped back, let their game quality speak for itself on every platform, and PC gamers absolutely rewarded them for it. Today, this brilliant mix of standardized RE engine tech, creator-led development, and a laser-focused digital-first model has resulted in 11 straight years of consecutive financial growth. 11 years. Their franchises are just putting up unbelievable numbers right now. You got Monster Hunter Wilds crossing 11 million units, the Resident Evil franchise hitting a mind-blowing 213 million lifetime sales, and Street Fighter reaching 60 million. The shift to high-margin digital downloads really paid off. You see, Capcom didn't just survive the death of the arcade. They didn't just survive their own, honestly, terrible creative decisions during the HD era transition. No. They thoroughly analyzed their failures, built the exact right proprietary tools, and most importantly, they remembered who they were. They proved to the entire industry that a legacy publisher absolutely can achieve massive, sustainable growth, not by chasing whatever the fleeting trend of the day is, but by prioritizing their own internal creators and committing fully to a platform-agnostic digital model. So as we wrap up this explainer, you really have to wonder, are other struggling legacy game studios going to take a page out of Capcom's playbook? Are they going to invest in their own engines, trust their core identities, and fully embrace day one PC releases? Or are they just doomed to fade away, forever chasing the next big trend? Well, that's all for this explainer. Thanks so much for joining me as we unpacked the spectacular rise, fall, and digital resurrection of Capcom.